What is up, everybody? Welcome to a new episode of the Scary, Strange, and Paranormal True Tales from Sean. Hope everybody's doing fine. I am doing good. And we got a very special episode here, and this one is dedicated to a story from my father. Now, I told you in the beginning of this series that it would not just be from my personal experiences. It would be from people that I've talked to and experiences that both I've experienced, but also conversations and tales and stories that I've heard and read through the years, whether it be, magazines that I read, articles, Weird New Jersey, friends, family. This one is from my father, but this is a very special story because this one has been one that has stuck with us since I was a young child. Because this is a story about my father when he was very young. So I had grown up listening to this story, and this was always a family favorite. This was a story that I always would have my father tell when people would come over. Whenever I would get into a conversation, and this was a fan favorite amongst the family. My father probably told this story over 1,000,000 times to this day, like recently. And, it's because it's believable, it's true, and it's a good one. Because my father's not the kind of person where he makes up stuff or would have a reason to make BS. And he had a lot of witnesses and other people with him that also tell the same exact story, including my grandmother. You heard about a story about my grandmother from my mother's side. This is my grandmother from my father's side, my father's mother. If you tuned into the episode about Jesus showing up in the television, that was my mom's mom. This story involves my dad's mom, my grandma Mary. Now, this is probably one of the scariest stories you'll hear on here from another person, meaning not personally from me, that I'm relaying. And I've heard it, and I could tell you into detail how he describes it. And it's pretty scary. Now, I'm not going to give exact locations. There is, some privacy and whatnot involved, and but I'm gonna tell you a roundabout in the area, and the story that goes behind this. So basically, my father had many brothers and sisters. There was like 13 of them altogether. And I don't know exactly how many was in the, well, let's see. I think there was about 3 of them in the car at the time of this story. It was him and his I believe it was his brother Leo and his sister Helen. Let's just say. And they were sitting in the back seat of the car, and his mother, my grandmother, was driving. Because she used to drive them all around, whatever, school and activities or whatever, or go to the grocery store, and maybe the dad was at home with the other kids, the other siblings, right? Okay, so, or they were at friend's house or whatever. They weren't home. They were always scattered around. They were different ages, So everybody did their own thing. Well, that's who was in the car. So we were in upper northern New Jersey, and they were going down a very long road by a reservoir. Now, mind you, this reservoir was known. There was no Weird New Jersey or anything like that back then. That all came later from stories and articles from people. They didn't have anything like that back then. If they did, it would be insane. Right? You know about Clinton Road and all these other local legends and local urban myths that I always tell you guys about. We have tons of them. I could sit here and talk all day. So in that area, they had been known for hauntings, but they had been known for UFOs and stuff, sighted over the reservoir. Well, there's very desolate roads. We talked about Clinton Road and strange roads on here. We have that gravity road where if you put your car in neutral, it goes backwards up a hill. It's supposed to be kids pushing the car. If you actually put powder or flour on your car, you could actually see the little fingerprints of kids. It's true. I've done it. Very scary. So, long story short, they were in that area and they were cutting through. My grandmother probably traveled it thousands of times. And it's like, it's almost like Clinton Road, but it's like one of those roads where you wouldn't want to break down. There's not a lot of civilization. It's like the boondocks, Big reservoir, a lot of woods, especially back then it wasn't really built up. Today it's probably more built up. There's probably more developments. There's probably more houses and whatnot. And back then there really wasn't. So they're driving back. And as they're driving back, my dad says to my grandmother, his mother, my grandmother, "Hey, Mom, look, there's a lady in the road." Now, this was starting to get dark. It wasn't like pitch dark, but it was like dusk, The sun was going down. There was a lady on the side of the road, almost looked like a hitchhiker, but she was walking nonchalant. But then as they got closer to her, because you could see way in the distance because it was like a flat, long road, it looked like she had like a white gown on, almost like a wedding dress. And she was all straggly. And she was wobbling in the road. So the first instance, my grandmother was like this. She had to help everyone. She'd pick up anybody. She'd pick up a serial killer. She always was known to give people lifts to, but things were different back then. Let's be honest. It's not like it was now. It was a little bit safer then. So the kids are all terrified. "Oh, Mom, don't stop. And she's going, "Calm down. It's just a lady." It was a younger woman. So she pulls the car over and she pulls, the window down in the car and she says, "Can I help you, ma'am?" And the lady just stared at her and then she started screaming, "I need help. He's after me. I need help. I got to get out of here." She was all like scarred, beat up, some blood on her face. But she was all ripped, like her clothes were like ripped. So my grandmother felt bad, so she's like, I'm going to take you to the police. There was no phones back then, obviously. So she says, "I'm on my way home." She says, "But get in the car, I'll take you to the police. We can report this." So the kids are like, no, in the back, My dad said his brother Leo was in the back with a wiffle bat. They used to have like a wiffle bat for like playing in the field. He actually was holding it behind her, deathly afraid. One thing though, my father said that he'll never forget to this day was that this lady stunk. But he describes it as like citronella. Like a citronella candle. Put it to you this way, my father says that the car stunk for days and days, that my father's father had to actually fumigate and air out the car and where she was sitting because this woman had a fucking odor that was so fucking nasty. Like she had been living in the woods for days, but my father said it wasn't even like that, like a dirty homeless person smell. It was like something beyond that. It was like he could smell rot on her. So they're driving and she's not talking and my grandmother's trying to make conversation, but the lady is focused on the road. My grandmother gets to the local police station, which my grandmother was actually best friends with a lot of them. Um, because my father's dad did a lot of business in the local area, and he knew them personally. So she figures I'll follow up on what happened here. And she knew who was working at the time in the office. So she pulled over and she said to the girl, just walk in and ask for so-and-so. She says, they're going to take care of you. So the lady jumps out of the car and she runs out. So they go home, and I guess my dad said that they all talked about it during dinner, and my father's father, of course, said, you're crazy. What are you doing picking up stranglers like that? Of course, then he walked out there later on, and he fucking smelled the car, and it stunk. It was nasty. It was actually horrific. So the next day, my grandmother was going to go to the post office or pick up milk, whatever. She had left the house. So she wound up going the same way. She was going to go take a shortcut. She wound up going the long way to go the same exact way as she went the night before. So she said, you know what? I'm going past the police station. Let me stop in and ask how that girl had made out. She stops in. And she goes in the police station and she says, oh, how'd that lady make out that was screaming, that was hitchhiking, that she came in all, messed up and beaten up from a boyfriend or fiance or whatever. And all the cops stopped and looked at her and said, what? And these were people that she knew. And she says, yeah, weren't any of you working last night? And they go, yeah, we were here. And my grandmother said, well, I told her to come in. She needed help. And they all looked at each other again and they're like, nobody came in. Nobody. We didn't see nothing. They said, we remember a car had pulled up in front of the station last night, but nobody got out. So my grandmother said, what'd she take off and run back into the woods? The cop said she must have because we didn't see anyone. Our patrol team or whoever didn't see anyone. So she took off again. And like a week later, she saw one of the cops in front of the post office, coming out of the post office. And she says, man, that still strikes me to this day. She says about you not seeing that lady that I dropped off. And he said, what did she look like? And my grandmother explained it. And he goes, it didn't hit me until days after you had come in to check up on that woman. The cop said, you're like the second or third woman in the past 15 years that have reported the same thing. He said, that's a local legend, a story that people pick up this woman that was murdered by her fiance or her husband or whatever. He says you can actually look it up in the town hall in the local. It's reported. She's known. And he told her the whole story about it. And she went back home and looked up information on it, and it was reported. And she wasn't the only person wound up finding out that other people had picked her up and described her. And she was like a known legend, local, ghost in the area. My grandmother was one of them. She picked her up. And my father said he'll never forget it. The stench was unbelievable. It was like almost like death. Like it wasn't like a person that stunk, like that didn't put deodorant on. He said it was even like beyond that. You know what I mean? Like it was just a horrible, horrible stench. like a Rob Reiner kind of stench. It was unbelievable. So, what do you guys think about that? That always stuck with me because that's a real story. That ain't made up. And that's just like I told you, one of the freaking weird, crazy things that happens in my area. You can look up information. You can look up Weird New Jersey. You could look up the local urban legends of our area. The whole state is fucked. South Jersey. But I mean, you'll hear a lot about South Jersey, but there's a lot about Northern New Jersey where I'm at. There's stuff I could tell you about. I could sit here all day. We're going to have an episode dedicated to my area. We're going to look at a Weird New Jersey magazine. I have about 600 of them. And we're going to look through an issue, and I'm going to tell you stuff that I know about and that relates to me that I could elaborate on. But that's just one instance. I try to incorporate you guys into the show, and at least one comment per episode I try to read and give you guys a shout out. And I did get one, and I promised the guy I would read it off for him. So I would like to take this moment, a segment on our show here, to incorporate you guys and give one of you guys a shout out. So you guys chimed in. You guys wrote me. Let me just say, you guys have been amazing with writing and commenting on this series. You have, go back on the past episodes and hear my comments when I read when I'm reading off your comments that you left. You guys are amazing. You've been really, really writing some interesting things, and we've been, sharing them with everyone. I'm going to do that right now. This is from C. Perez. Hi, Murray. Here is a second story. It happened to my mom's friend. Let's call her Mrs. G. All started some years ago with the sad suicide of Mrs. G's neighbor. He was a young guy that lived with at his parents' house. Some days after his death, Miss G had a dream involving this young guy. He was just standing next to a bureau, and he was pointing to a paper in the bureau. The next morning, Mrs. G talked about her dream with parents of this guy. Sometime later, she found out that in the bureau, the parents discovered like a dresser or like a drawer, right? Discovered a letter left by their son explaining the reason he had to end his life. Very sad, very tragic. And the discovery he made, thanks to Mrs. G. For some reason, the guy chose Miss G for helping him to transmit his last words to his parents. Why? She doesn't really know. They were just neighbors. I think that maybe because Miss G is one of those persons who emanates a lot of kindness. Wow. Wow. This is one of the best ones so far, I think. Yeah, that's very possible. Who loved ones and people that have passed over, who they decide to come through to, is up to them. But also, like you said, she may have that ability, to be more welcoming to spirits. Like me, they say that about me. They say that about me because I'm able to, to see a lot of that stuff and to experience a lot of that stuff. Some people are not. Some people have never experienced or witnessed or believe in anything. They're cold. They're shielded. Some are not. Some are the opposite. I think it depends on the person. I think it depends on how open you are and what you're able and allowing yourself to let in. And maybe also has to do with religion. Not too sure about that, but you're absolutely right. She may have just been more open, and that's why he came through to her. Wow, very interesting. Excellent comment. Thank you. So, again, we're going to continue the show the way we're doing it. So I would love for you guys to comment because I will feature as many comments on here as I can. I absolutely love sharing your comments because it's a really great way to, give you guys a shout out, but also looking to see what you have to say and also what your experiences is, because people all around the world have paranormal and strange stories to tell and share, and this is the platform to do it at. And that's why I started this series. Take care, guys. Hope to see you again soon on the next episode, The Scary, Strange, and Paranormal True Tales from Sean.